Welcome back to Watch the Bookerman and to episode number 21 of Paul Heyman's TNA 2010. We are on week 3 of the 4-week build to Sacrifice, the last pay-per-view before the second biggest show of the year, Slammiversary, and we're straight into tonight's show, continuing that build. Mauro and Taz are the first faces we see on the screen following the opening sequence, and they talk about tonight's show, promoting the main event between Bad Influence's Daniels and Jeff Hardy. Last week they were on opposite sides of a tag team match, neither man involved in a fall, so tonight they'll battle it out after Desmond Wolfe pinned Samoa Joe in that main event. While they continue to fill in this backstory, they are joined by the number one contender, Mr. Anderson. Anderson lets them finish talking and listens, albeit while rolling his eyes, and he's not interested in the promotion for the other storylines. He's just here to talk about himself. He interjects and tells everybody to forget about all that because he's got something awesome to show them, and he's not going to show them yet, but stick around and watch because Mr. Anderson promises them a surprise that's going to be worth it. Before then, his big buddy Rob Terry is in action in the opener against Shark Boy. So a little bit of intrigue for what Mr. Anderson has planned, as well as continuing the mini storyline, I suppose. Mr. Anderson beat Shark Boy a couple of months ago. He's now mentioned him by name in that promo last week, and well, he faces Rob Terry, Shark Boy, and unsurprisingly is squashed by him. Rob Terry's only a little bit better than Shark Boy with a 47 compared to a 43. The match does cool the crowd a little, and it wasn't a great segment to open the show, so it's not particularly been the best start. So I'm quite confident that Jeff Hardy and Daniels will deliver. Rob Terry, he takes longer than he even needs. He could probably have got this match won in under a minute, but he likes to taunt and torment and torture Shark Boy before hitting him with a chokeslam for the 1, 2, 3. He just placed a foot on the chest of Shark Boy. No effort whatsoever for him to beat him, and he stands over the down Shark Boy after the match. Mr. Anderson grabbing a microphone from the announcer's table. He stays sat beside Mauro and Taz, but he's directing Big Rob to unmask Shark Boy. Terry grabs Shark Boy, and he's going for the elaborate reveal, so he's playing to the crowd a little bit, and of course he stalls too long. D'Angelo De Niro runs down to the ring and stands on the apron staring down Rob Terry. They're both ready to fight, so Terry throws Shark Boy to the outside. He's out cold. Before Pope can enter the ring, however, he is taken down from behind with that steel pipe, the signature steel pipe of Homicide. He hits the Pope with the steel pipe to the back of the leg, and the former World Elite members, who both voluntarily left the group, unlike everybody else when Eric Young disbanded it, these two actually left of their own volition. They work over D'Angelo De Niro, and there is no sign of Kurt Angle. That's the key takeaway from this segment. Mr. Anderson picks up the microphone again and says that now is the perfect time for his big moment. He tells the people behind the scenes to run a promo or whatever they've got scheduled up next, but be back with him in a couple of minutes because after the break, he's got something awesome to show them. Again, it's a average segment. It advances the World Heavyweight Championship storyline and doesn't lose or gain heat to it, so it shows that we really need to build this rivalry up over the next couple of weeks. Homicide underperforming, but Anderson coming out of it looking good, which is a good sign for the number one contender. As we go then into an interview with Bad Influence, Jeremy Borash is talking to them, and all three of them have their own issues to discuss, but the key point is that they've been a dominant force in TNA since their formation at Lockdown. Kazarian starts referencing the challenge of Roderick Strong from last week. He doesn't see much of a threat from Roderick Strong, asking what he's done in TNA. He's been here 5 minutes and he's done nothing, but apparently his opponent for Sacrifice has got a tune-up match against his buddy Okada later in the night, and Kazarian is going to have an eye on that match for sure. Matt Morgan says that the X Division Championship is staying with Bad Influence at Sacrifice, but at Lockdown, the Global Championship should have also been theirs too. Morgan beat Jay Lethal last week and put that little punk's title ambitions on ice, so instead, Matt Morgan intends to be the one to stop the monster. He says this in a mocking tone. Of course, that's been the question over Abyss's run throughout 2010. Who is going to stop him? And Matt Morgan's taken a little bit of a shot at that, making fun of that idea that Abyss is this unstoppable monster, because Morgan himself thinks that he is more than capable of taking the title against a man who he does have a little bit of history with in TNA. As for Daniels, he's focusing on tonight's main event. Last week, Desmond Wolfe pinned Samoa Joe in the middle of the ring, and they stood tall. Tonight he's going to seal the deal by doing the same to TNA's biggest superstar, Jeff Hardy. So it's a solid promo with all three of them improvising well, gaining heat to the storyline, which is sort of the all-encompassing Bad Influence storyline at the minute. I've got quite a few storylines that are sort of intertwining storylines. So we've got the two big matches going into Sacrifice, Bobby Lashley and AJ Styles and Kurt Angle and Mr. Anderson. They're both in one storyline. And then the Knockouts Championship, we've got a few different things going on there that's all put into one storyline. And similarly, we're seeing this now with Bad Influence. It's partly the X Division, but also we've got all the stuff with Daniels and Morgan. So I'm looking for things to be a little bit more focused going into Slammiversary, and I think after Sacrifice I might actually end most of the storylines we've got and just start new storylines, maybe the ones with decent heat, although I don't think we've got that many with decent heat at the minute. They can continue and be evolved into other storylines, like the Jeff Hardy Desmond Wolfe one, perhaps becoming a Desmond Wolfe Samoa Joe one. The point being, we want the storylines to be focused and to have good heat going into Slammiversary, because I think that's going to be a huge part of ensuring that Slammiversary delivers. Returning from the break, Mr. Anderson has a cameraman following him. He keeps us updated as he walks, making comments, just being a smart ass like he is. Anderson is excited for his big reveal, and he reaches a door. He then opens that door to reveal Kurt Angle tied to a chair. Kurt Angle is struggling to get free, but he can't, and Anderson says that it's amazing what a few dollars can get you, adding that Homicide must have done this before to have done such a good job. Pretty much confirming there that there is a financial arrangement between Mr. Anderson and Homicide, explaining why Homicide is doing the bidding of Anderson. Kurt Angle is rabid and furious but cannot break free. This allows Mr. Anderson to mock and belittle him, knowing that there's no chance of any immediate retaliation. He even reenacts the Destination X finish, where he puts his arm around the neck of Kurt Angle and suggests that he might choke him out once again, just like he did at Destination X, to take the World Heavyweight Championship at Sacrifice. So a very, very cocky side from Mr. Anderson. Obviously, he's emboldened by the fact that Kurt Angle is tied up, and he then leaves. We now know where Kurt Angle is, so hopefully somebody should be around soon to release him. But Kurt Angle worked the crowd well while improvising and doing well while shouting the odds and being furious. So a decent segment there, gaining heat to the storyline, but still not where we need it to be. Like I said, I think we'll need a proper promo between the two of them. Madison Rayne then defeats Angelina Love in the second match of the night. Another botched interference by Velvet Sky. She is proving to be more of a hindrance to Angelina Love's ambitions at the moment. The two women having good chemistry, two decent performances, Angelina Love considerably better, gaining heat to the storyline with a 55 rated solid match. Velvet Sky doing some good work at ringside in terms of her character, but in storyline very much backfiring as Madison Rayne hits a running big boot. Don't remember using that move, but following her victory, she stands tall in the ring. Madison Rayne is delighted and smirks at Velvet Sky, who has once again seen her involvement backfire, and she's got her head in her hands again. She is absolutely mortified that she has cost her best friend, especially considering what Love said last week, that she had to make it up to her. Well, now she owes her too. Last week, Tara agreed to face Angelina Love at Sacrifice as long as Velvet Sky was barred from ringside, and Taz says that given recent developments, Love probably stands a better chance of winning without Velvet at ringside. Maro adds that having defeated Love, Madison Rayne might have something to say about the potential Knockouts Championship match at Sacrifice, and would have every reason to feel she has a claim to that title shot tonight. Interestingly, Velvet Sky will go one-on-one with Tara later tonight, and she'll want to get some level of redemption in that match, losing heat to the storyline unfortunately just because it was rated on Madison Rayne's overness. We then head to the back and we see Kurt Angle being released from the chair. It's by staff members. The World Heavyweight Champion is fired up, and once the rope is a little bit loose, he finishes the job himself, tearing it off, getting up and leaving the room with intent. It's obvious he's looking for Mr. Anderson. Anticipating how fired up Kurt Angle would be, Paul Heyman waits outside the room, looking to be the first port of call to calm him down. Angle bursts past Heyman, however, despite Paul promising him a match with Homicide next week. Kurt does not care and asks why he should wait. He's going to go find him and Anderson right now, and there is nobody in this building, especially Paul Heyman, who can stop him. Both men improvising well, but again it's a short segment and only gets a 69. The go home show is going to be huge for this World Heavyweight title feud, and based on what I've got planned, I think we will be okay with getting some heat to that storyline. Speaking of adding heat to storylines, we have Alyssa Flash come out in a decent 48 rated segment. The commentators are surprised to see her. Paul London and James Storm is scheduled to end the hour, but Flash obviously has something to say and she is not going to wait. She calls out Jimmy Jacobs, saying that they had an agreement. She pledged her allegiance to the New Age live on Impact, and it's time that Jacobs delivered on his part of the deal. Jimmy Jacobs comes down and is followed by Awesome Kong and Hamada. He says that these things take time, but Flash refuses to be fobbed off again. It's been 2 straight weeks now, and she pushes past Jimmy Jacobs, getting in the face of Hamada and Kong. She's sick of the games. She asks them directly if they have a problem with her, and if they do, it's time to do something about it. Kong steps forward, going face to face with Flash, making it clear that she definitely has an issue with her. Jacobs manages to hold Hamada back and tries to reason with Kong, asking her to step down, but Flash slaps Kong across the face and she absolutely loses it. Jacobs tries to intervene, but gets an elbow inadvertently from Awesome Kong, which knocks him down. He holds his face. Flash jumps on Kong's back while there's a slight distraction, but ends up being thrown to the outside and seriously hurts her arm in the landing. Kong and Hamada then leave without Jimmy Jacobs, who is still down. He's holding his face. He's in complete shock that Awesome Kong just laid her hands on him. Obviously it wasn't intentional, but still, the fact that she didn't listen to his instruction and that resulted in him getting hurt is probably not going to sit well with the leader of the New Age. Daphne helping Flash at ringside during the segment, Awesome Kong laying hands on Jimmy Jacobs, but also Alyssa Flash seriously injuring her arm as she fell out of the ring to the outside. She's helped to the back eventually as we go into a backstage interview. Samoa Joe responds to his defeat last week in the main event and says that bad influence were the difference in that match. It had nothing to do with Desmond Wolfe versus Samoa Joe, and the time will come when those numbers games don't work and it's going to be one-on-one. He's not sweating bad influence. He is interested in Desmond Wolfe though. Joe adds that there's somebody else in TNA calling themselves the baddest man in pro wrestling, a slight reference to Bobby Lashley from Samoa Joe there, but at Lockdown only one man lived up to that billing. Desmond Wolfe also called himself the last captain standing, but the truth is that at the end of the lethal lockdown, 9 men were down and Samoa Joe was the only man standing. Ending the interview, Joe says that he understands that the time will come for him and Desmond Wolfe to go one-on-one, but before then, he knows that Jeff Hardy is going to put him down for good, and tonight's main event with Daniels is going to be the perfect preview for Jeff Hardy to show Desmond Wolfe what awaits him. A 67 rated segment there involving Samoa Joe, not particularly good. We then get another promo as Beer Money make their way down to the ring for Storm's match with Paul London. They respond to the hooligans from last week and say that the words of 2 bitter little stoners are not going to get to them. At Sacrifice, Beer Money are going to beat the crap out of London and Kendrick, and tonight will be a preview of that. Both men not doing well without a script to follow. It does advance the storyline and it's still a decent segment even though they did struggle. Again, it's another 63 rating. I said a few times that this is about where these guys are. They're very much upper mid-card ratings at the minute, a 59 and a 62. Also attesting to that, it's a middle of the road storyline at the minute. We're trying to build them up, and if I looked back to episode 1, we might see there's been some progress for these guys, maybe not, but Paul London picks up the victory in 11 minutes and 32 against James Storm. There's no shenanigans in this, not a great deal more to say than we sent them out to have a good match. I think I've done storytelling and all out, so no other notes really, no interference, no involvement from Robert Roode and Brian Kendrick other than them sort of verbally sparring on the outside. This is all about the action in the ring, and Paul London does pick up the victory with a shooting star press. Brian Kendrick joins Paul London in the ring after the match as the number 1 contenders celebrate the win. Beer Money head up the ramp. They're furious with the defeat, but there's not much they can do. It was just a fair win. But Brian Kendrick will face Robert Roode next week on the Go Home show, and perhaps that'll be where they get a little bit of revenge on them before the pay-per-view match, of course. Mauro and Taz then send to the back as the incident involving Kurt Angle continues to unfold. We end the hour with Kurt Angle shown in the back, and he has found Homicide. However, when he sees Homicide in the distance, he is stopped in his tracks by Rob Terry. Rob Terry stands in Angle's way, and it's clear that Kurt has no issue going through Big Rob. However, Mauro now speaks over the footage, saying that we're going to have to take a break. We then return to the second hour of the show, and we see that Kurt Angle and Rob Terry have been brawling, and the World Heavyweight Champion has managed to get the better of Terry and has got through him. However, Homicide is no longer visible to him, and he's frustrated once again. Kurt Angle furious as he continues to look for the man who was basically responsible for him being tied to that chair and then humiliated by Mr. Anderson earlier. The assumption being that when Kurt Angle arrived at the building today, he was jumped, sort of abducted and tied up. But he hasn't forgot about the number 1 contender either, and he makes it clear that he's also after Mr. Anderson, who played as much, if not a bigger role in that happening. We then get the tune-up match for Roderick Strong against Kazuchika Okada, the idea that these two friends are going up against each other, and Roderick Strong was actually furious with the booking of this match because he is actually defeated by Okada. Might seem to be illogical booking considering one of them is going for a title shot at the pay-per-view and the other one isn't, but there is a reason. Matt Morgan and Kazarian coming out. Matt Morgan is able to distract the referee once again as Kazarian hits Roderick Strong with the title belt, causing him to slump in the ring. Kazuchika Okada doesn't realise what's happening, but just sees that Roderick Strong is prone, hits him with a bridging suplex and picks up the victory in a 53 rated match. We get a decent reaction from the crowd, and again that nonsensical subpar wrestling. Okada v Roderick Strong, I can imagine that having subpar wrestling, definitely. Strong with a decent performance despite his loss, and a 35 from Kazuchika Okada, so it's a win for him, so hopefully building him up a little bit, getting him some more momentum, but he does lose heat to the X Division Championship storyline. Roderick Strong, though, defeated because of Kazarian's involvement, perhaps trying to cause a rift between him and his best friend Okada. Of course, Okada did technically take advantage of what Kazarian did, albeit not being aware. He then begins to realise what happened after the match and checks on his friend Roderick Strong, but Strong is a little bit spiky with him, and he also sees Kazarian at the top of the ramp. The X Division Champion holds the title up that he clocked Roderick Strong with and smirks at Okada, who unintentionally benefited from it. At Sacrifice, Kazarian will defend his X Division Championship against Roderick Strong. It's a 63 rating, so gaining heat to the storyline once again, and the idea here with the booking is that Roderick Strong is going to be even more angry at Kazarian now. Kazarian undermining his credibility, really. Strong thinking that he can be the new contender in the division, but Kazarian hands him a defeat there and stands tall with his title. Lauren Brooke is then shown outside of the medical room, and we see that she is getting an update from Alyssa Flash. It's clear that the incident between Kong and Flash hurt Flash seriously. Alyssa then cuts a furious promo on the New Age and says that if you can't join them, then you have to beat them. She tells Awesome Kong that when she's healed up, she is coming for her, and points out that she already beat Hamada weeks ago, so there's no reason that Flash and anybody who she chooses can't beat those two for the titles. Brooke says that she won't have to wait long because she can confirm that Flash will face Kong next week. If Flash can win, she will earn a Knockouts tag team title shot in the future. This is of course the first Flash has heard of it. She's been being seen to by doctors since the injury, and she points out there is no way she's going to be cleared to compete. Whose stupid idea was this? Lauren explains that Paul Heyman did consider this, and while the match will take place either way next week, Alyssa is more than welcome to find a replacement if she can't compete. Alyssa Flash doing well, improvising again, and her segments seem to be very, very good for this New Age storyline, gaining heat once again. We then head elsewhere in the back, and Kurt Angle is once again shown. We're trying to have a thread of this storyline throughout the show. Rather than having one big segment involving Anderson and Angle, we want it to be sort of the story of the episode, and this time Angle has found Mr. Anderson instead of Homicide, who he was looking for. Unfortunately for the World Heavyweight Champion, we're in the parking lot, and Mr. Anderson is getting in his car and he drives off before Angle can reach him. He sticks his head out of the car window, and Mr. Anderson is continuing to mock Kurt Angle, saying that he should really calm down, otherwise something bad might happen to him. Mr. Anderson then drives off, knowing full well what is around the corner for Kurt Angle. Kurt is then hit with something from behind, and the camera pans to show Homicide with that trusty steel pipe. Homicide has put the World Heavyweight Champion down and will face him on next week's show, just 3 nights before the Sacrifice pay-per-view. So Kurt Angle's night not going well really. Started off with him being attacked and tied up, ends with him being attacked, but next week, before Sacrifice, he will have the chance to get some revenge over Homicide, and I think that'll be a good match between the two of them. I'm not sure, I feel like I've seen a match between them, but it might be the Amazing Red Kurt Angle match I'm thinking of, but I think the dynamic between them two could make for a decent TV match. We then go into the 5th match of the night, and it's Tara defeating Velvet Sky in 6 minutes. Was only going to be one winner in this match. It's a Widow's Peak, a 63 performance from Tara. Velvet Sky doing herself no favours in the eyes of Angelina Love with a defeat here, and after the match, Jeremy Borash joins Tara in the ring. Another decisive victory, showing why she is the figurehead of this division, and she has an announcement to make. She accepts that she agreed to face Angelina Love at Sacrifice, but perhaps she was a little bit hasty, because earlier tonight we saw Madison Rayne defeat Angelina Love. Tara has a solution. She spoke to the office, and at Sacrifice, she's agreed that she will defend the title against both Angelina Love and Madison Rayne in a 3-way. the things are getting ugly storyline advancing again, improvising well with Tara, and it's a 59 rating. She's always good for a rating about around the 60s, so happy with that. As we go into the final half hour of the show, we see a medical boot before the camera pans up to show AJ Styles in his Gainesville, Georgia home. Mike Tenay has joined him to speak with the man who lost the TNA World Heavyweight Championship at Lockdown, and he asks him about the injury. AJ Styles says that 3 weeks ago he was the World Heavyweight Champion, and now he's really low. He puts over the fact that this injury has affected him both physically and mentally, and the fact that he's gone from being on top of the world to not even being able to do the thing that he loves. He adds that he has seriously injured his ankle and says that he was told there is next to a 0% chance of him competing at Sacrifice. Mike Tenay speaks about Kurt Angle, and despite him being the one who injured AJ Styles, the ex-champion remains calm. He's not holding anything against him. Anything goes inside the 6 sides of steel. He accepted that. By going into a steel cage match, you know that things like that can happen, and at Lockdown, he'll admit it, the better man won. It's the first time he's been bested since he won the title back at No Surrender, but he can admit that. That doesn't mean he's not coming to get that title back when he's cleared. Mike then brings up the actions and words of Lashley recently, and this is where AJ Styles' demeanour changes. He's not calm anymore. He is fired up and says that what Lashley did to him was different. Styles is so fired up that he says he doesn't give a shit whether he's cleared or not. He's coming to Sacrifice, whether it's a match or whether it's just a fight. He is going to get his hands on Bobby Lashley. Paul Heyman might not believe it, Bobby Lashley might not believe it, but AJ Styles is going to be there next week on Impact to prove that he is ready to fight, to prove that he can stand on his own 2 feet, and he wants to see Bobby Lashley in the middle of the ring next week on Impact. So AJ Styles putting over everything that he's gone through, having lost the title, putting over the fact that yes, he is injured, and yes, he probably won't be cleared to compete at Sacrifice, but that's not going to stop him coming to Impact next week, and it's not going to stop him being at Sacrifice. The storyline developing here that AJ shouldn't be wrestling, but he's going to do everything in his power to make sure he can get his hands on Bobby Lashley after he took advantage of him at the end of Lockdown. Cutting to Paul Heyman's office, the man in charge then comments on AJ Styles being here next week as part of a larger promotion of the Go Home show, the idea being that he was going to do this segment regardless, but of course that was a pre-recorded interview, so we're going to assume that Paul Heyman's already seen it, and he decides he needs to address that. He also says that Kurt Angle will go a one-on-one with Homicide next week as he promoted, but he's making that match a no DQ, no count out, anything goes street fight. As well as that, we'll see Brian Kendrick versus Robert Roode and Awesome Kong in singles action for the first time in 2010 against Alyssa Flash or a replacement of her choosing. Abyss and Hernandez will also team up as they will face 2 members of Bad Influence. As he continues to talk, he is cut off by a fired up Bobby Lashley. He's heard what Joe had to say earlier, and he tells Paul that he needs to make sure that his locker room keeps Bobby's name out of their mouth, specifically speaking about Samoa Joe. Heyman sees how angry Lashley is and says that he thinks the TNA fans are ready to see him let out some of this aggression. We don't know if that match is going to happen at Sacrifice. Bobby Lashley seems certain that he's good enough to face Kurt Angle at Slammiversary, so instead of being the main event next week, Kurt Angle and Homicide can open the show because we've got a brand new main event. Bobby Lashley versus Samoa Joe in a Bound for Glory rematch. So again, not that good of a segment. It's rated on Paul Heyman's Entertainment, so I'd really hope that it could get a better rating. I can't remember how long I did it. I'm assuming 3 minutes. So I would have hoped for better than that. Lashley's promo skills clearly aren't very good in this promo, so we are going to limit him going forward. He probably shouldn't have been speaking that much anyway. He works as the silent badass. He's always been that really, or he's always been at his best when playing the silent badass, so I should have known that anyway. We're setting up for a big go home show next week. I think that's 4, maybe 5 matches announced for that show. There'll probably be 6 on the show, but we then get ready for the main event, and while the music of Bad Influence hits ahead of the main event, Daniels is nowhere to be seen. Mauro and Taz soon have an explanation, and they're told that they're going to send to the back. There we see Jay Lethal has launched himself at Matt Morgan, furious about his words from earlier, furious about everything that's gone on over the last few weeks, and Morgan and Kazarian were set to join Daniels at ringside. Jay Lethal is pulled away from Daniels and Kazarian, but is saved from further retaliation. He would have got his ass kicked by the three of them, really. But amazing Red and Austin Creed, as well as a few people in the back who see the incident, pull the two sides apart. Everybody's kept separate now as Bad Influence set themselves to head to the ring. Another staff member who is wearing a headset comes and says that Daniels is going to have to go it alone. We can't have another incident like this unfolding during the main event, so Morgan and Kazarian are banned from ringside. Daniels obviously not happy with this as he goes into the main event, but he does do it, and it's only a 67 from Jeff Hardy and Daniels. 280s from the two of them. Like I said, everybody's bad from ringside, so it's just a straightforward victory for Jeff Hardy and Daniels. The draw of this match clearly just being Jeff Hardy wrestling on TV. It's not something I've done that much. I think this is maybe his second or third singles match since the start of the year on Impact. An exceptional match, but only gets a 67. 280 performances, great chemistry. I mean, I get that the announcing probably took a little bit away. We got the crowd buzzing. It was a steal the show match, open match, decisive finish, all out. I'm really confused by the rating of this. I was expecting mid-70s, maybe even an 80. What's the issue with this match? Stamina. Maybe I should have done it a couple of minutes less, but I don't see how it could have been that bad. Are we going to get a note that Jeff was exposed by this match? I didn't get that warning when booking it. Yeah, I'm just going to have to accept that, I guess, but Jeff Hardy defeats Daniels in the main event, maybe undermining the momentum of Bad Influence a little bit, but the idea that it's the strength in numbers, Bad Influence as a trio when Kazarian and Daniels are at ringside, or when Morgan and Kazarian at ringside, as it would have been in this case, they're an unstoppable force. When you get them alone, it's not quite the same, but nonetheless, Jeff Hardy celebrates his victory, his moment cut short by the appearance of Desmond Wolfe. Hardy expects another opportunistic attack from Wolfe. He always knows when to strike, but Desmond instead takes a microphone. Jeff not improvising well, but Desmond does improvise well as he indicates that he is not here for a fight, and he only agrees to enter the ring once Hardy puts his hands down. Desmond Wolfe says enough and talks about the 5 months that these two have been going back and forth, trading wins and trading shots. It's been 50-50 between them, but Sacrifice is just 10 days away, and Wolfe sees no better time to draw a line under this than them. Both of them have sacrificed 5 months of their career trying to be the better man. And while Joe wants to talk about him standing tall at Lockdown because he beat Eric Young, this has only ever been about which one of these two have been left standing. It has always been about Jeff Hardy and Desmond Wolfe and their battle for dominance. Jeff Hardy cuts Desmond Wolfe off, and he says he sees exactly where this is going, and he's down. At Sacrifice, they'll see who the last man standing is. In a last man standing match, the final showdown between the two men, it's pretty much agreed on there and then that Desmond Wolfe and Jeff Hardy will face in their final match at Sacrifice. This will actually be the 4th single match between them, so we could be hindered by the repetitive booking note, but also it's a last man standing match. We're going to give them time, we're going to give them a clean finish, likely, unless plans change between now and then. But it's a solid go-home segment, gaining heat to the storyline. So we've got a hot storyline, we've got a stipulation match, it's on pay-per-view, so I think we should be okay. It will be the 4th match they've wrestled, but I do think it'll be better than the other ones. Again, we're on a bit of a downward trend despite changing to that regular focus from I think a 75 or a 74 to a 71 and now down to a 70. Did increase our popularity in 24 regions. Getting these notes about Britain and Canada, which is a little bit annoying, but there's not much I can do about that, I think, unless I change the broadcasters that I've got, which at the minute I think we're locked into pretty long-term deals. Not something I'm going to worry about. The company's going to keep growing as long as we put in on good shows. Tara gives her opinion. She likes Homicide, so that's good. Perhaps a potential rivalry between the two of them in the future. That is a terrible rating for the show. I don't know what's gone on with that Jeff Hardy and Daniels match there, and the ratings below 1 million. Maybe there was a big major TV event, but really disappointed with that. Daniels and Jeff Hardy, there's no reason that shouldn't have been a great match. I mean, things could be worse. We could be booking the WWE now because they have just put the World Heavyweight Championship. I only noticed this quite recently on R-Truth. He defeated Undertaker in the main event of Extreme Rules, and Batista defeated Randy Orton and Hornswoggle to retain the WWE title. So a disappointing show from us there, albeit I'm not sure how the game came up with that rating. I thought it was pretty good. A solid main event. Daniels and Jeff Hardy would definitely put on a very, very good match together, especially having great chemistry and those two good ratings. Jerry Lawler's still in ECW title matches. It's all going on in WWE. Crazy times for them, but we're focused on Sacrifice and booking that show, and next week we've got 4 or 5 matches pre-announced for what is going to be a huge go-home show to the last pay-per-view before Slammiversary.